Hello and welcome to the second edition in Curious Kinships. This is a series that's become a little more sporadic than I originally intended it to be, where I talk about some interesting, curious, and non-obvious connections between ragas. So today I want to talk about two sets of ragas. The first is going to be Shuddha Danyasi and Udayaravichandrika on the one hand and Nattai on the other. And then I'll move on to Pavani and Sarangatarangini. So Shuddha Danyasi is a very popular raga. It's been used, the scale has been used a lot in film music. And of course, it's also quite prominent in Carnatic. Hmm. Tadara nanna, tadana, na, 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 na. There are several popular songs in Carnatic in this raga. So one of them is Narayana Ninna Namada Smaraneya Saramritavu Yenna Nalige Varali Narayana. This is my favorite kriti in this raga. Of course, there are several others. Subramanyana by Dikshitar, Sri Parthasarathi also by Dikshitar. So now, if I asked you what does this have to do with Nattai, you might very reasonably say absolutely nothing at all. And you would be right. But, sometimes, like rarely, that Pamagasa, just that portion in the Avarohanam of Shuddha Danyasi, used to remind me slightly of Nattai. The reason is because Nattai in the Avarohanam is Pamarisa. So what is considered the Rishabham in Nattai is considered the Gandharam here in Shuddha Danyasi. So just that portion alone very, fleetingly used to sometimes remind me of Nattai. Of course, there are huge differences. I mean, it's like day and night. I'm not at all trying to say that there's some very close connection between these two. But yeah, like some huge differences are that big gamakam, kampita gamakam in the Gandharam in Shuddha Danyasi. You don't have that in that Rishabham in the Nattai is not like that, of course. And of course, the other major difference is this has the lower knee. Shuddha Danyasi has a lower knee. Zagamapani sa sa ni pa ma ga sa sa ga ma pa ni sa sa ni pa ma ga sa. So, and of course Nattai has a higher knee. Sa ni pa ma re sa. So yeah, there is lots of significant differences, but just that one portion Pama Gasa would sometimes remind me of the Pama Risa in Nattai. Now, what if we changed the Nishadam in Shuddha Danyasi and made it the higher Nishadam and also reduced the Gamakam, both in the ascent and in the descent? Sa ga ma pa ni sa ni pa ma ga sa. This raga came on my radar for the first time when, in 2005, when Chandramukhi became a huge hit and the song Rara Sarasakurara was a roaring success. So that was kind of still the relatively early days of internet in India, and lots of googling and looking up discussion forums and all that on ragas or film songs. I got to know that this raga is called Shrotaswini. So Shrotaswini, if you just look at the scale, is just Shuddha Danyasi but with the higher Nishadam instead of the lower Nishadam. So all good. And interestingly, even though just going by the swaras, this should be even more reminiscent of Nattai, not once did that occur to me. Once I was exposed to Shrotaswini, not once did I feel that Shrotaswini was similar to Nattai in any way at all, which is, I guess, curious because I felt this vague resemblance with Shuddha Danyasi, and it should be even more so with Shrotaswini, but for whatever reason I didn't. And then, of course, I love this raga Shrotaswini, and I think sometimes I even like it a little more than Shuddha Danyasi. So I found many pieces on YouTube. Well, I shouldn't say many, but a handful. There was this very nice, I think it's just an improvisational piece by Embar Kannan and his nephew, keyboard Satya. I think I'm talking about maybe more than 10 years ago. And then I think, if I remember right, Sri Ghatam Karthik had this instrumental ensemble called Heartbeat Ensemble, and I think they also had a piece in Shrotaswini. And just as an aside, Shrotaswini, when you do a Graha Bhedam to it, you get this other ragam called Surya or Sallapam. So anyway, so this was Shrotaswini, and as I said, I really loved it, and I was wondering why it doesn't have a big presence in Carnatic. Then about 5 years ago, I stumbled on this absolutely brilliant video by Professor S.R. Janakiraman, where he talks about this raga Udayaravichandrika. Now, a lot of people equate Udayaravichandrika with Shuddha Danyasi. Now, my very first teacher, she taught me Himagiri Tanaye Hemalate as in Udayaravichandrika, not Shuddha Danyasi. And she told me, I don't remember, I was very young, maybe 6 or 7 years old. So I don't remember what she said, but my understanding was that they are the same. Udayaravichandrika and Shuddha Danyasi are the same. Now, many sources, even today, consider them to be the same. And I think in the Tyagaraja school, in fact, Yenta Nerchina is considered to be Udayaravichandrika. So I thought they were just two names for the same raga. But in this, absolutely marvelous video, Professor S.R. Janakiraman explains the difference. So Udayaravichandrika, he says, is what I had known to be Shrotaswini. So I was pretty mind blown. I thought Shrotaswini was one of those newish, like fashionable, ragas that were not part of the traditional, Carnatic music. But, how wrong was I? Because, Sri SRJ explains so beautifully the history behind Udayaravichandrika. So apparently, in this work called Sangeeta Saramrita by Tulaja in the 18th century, early 18th century, there is a mention of, so Tulaja had a 21 Melakarta scheme, and there is a mention of a Melam in this scheme called Shuddha Nati. Now, unfortunately, Sri SRJ doesn't go into what the scale of Shuddha Nati is. So I don't know if it is our contemporary Chalanattai or what, I'm not sure. But apparently, Udayaravichandrika was listed as a Janyam of Shuddha Nati. You can imagine my amazement and happiness when I heard this. It had kind of come one full circle, like from me thinking that there was a vague connection between Shuddha Danyasi and Nattai, and then realizing that Shuddha Danyasi and Udayaravichandrika are similar but not the same, and then Udayaravichandrika actually having roots going back to something in the Nattai family. Now, Udayaravichandrika, according to Tulaja in this treatise apparently, had the Aronam Avaronam as Sa Re Ma Pa Ni Sa Ni Pa Ma Re Sa. So I was just awestruck. And also I kind of felt a little bit vindicated that I was not absolutely crazy in thinking that there was some kind of connection between Nattai and Shuddha Danyasi. Of course, this video doesn't say that there is. It's about Udayaravichandrika and Nattai, not Shuddha Danyasi and Nattai, but there's at least some kind of indirect connection. So, and then of course in the rest of the video, Sri SRJ goes into how various interpretations of Udayaravichandrika. So apparently, according to Muthu Venkatamakim, who was a descendant of Venkatamakim, Udayaravichandrika is a janyam of Dhuni Bhinna Shadjam, which is the Asampurna equivalent of our Dhenuka. So there again the Re 3 is gone and you have the Ga 2. So Dhenuka is Sa Re Ga Ma Pa Da Ni Sa Sa Ni Da Pa Ma Ga Re Sa Ta Li Le Ru Ra Ma Sa Ga Ma Pa Ni Sa Sa Ni Pa Ma Ga Sa would fit. I mean, we can argue about whether it's an appropriate melam or not, but notes wise it fits. So this was one interpretation, and then another interpretation according to Govinda and Sangeeta Chudamani apparently was that By the way, I'm just repeating all of this from that video, and I'm going to link that in the description. None of this is my own, research. So anyway, so then later, according to Govinda and Sangeeta Chudamani, apparently, Udayaravichandrika got equated to Shuddha Danyasi, and it was seen as a janyam of Nattabhairavi, where you have the lower knee, not the higher knee anymore. So then Udayaravichandrika got associated with what we now understand as Shuddha Danyasi. So anyway, this is just an interesting history. But I thought it was fascinating how, like, on the face of it, we would never associate Shuddha Danyasi to Nattai, but there is some kind of, interesting connection there. So this Dikshitar school of Udayaravichandrika, which has the higher knee, as I said, which is basically what we call today as Shrotaswini. The most famous song, I don't know if there are other songs, but the most famous song is, of course, Shri Guru Guha Murte. You absolutely must hear Professor SRJ sing that. The way he holds that nishadam, without any shakes, without any gamakam. And he, in fact, talks about this explicitly. He talks about the importance of plain notes in Carnatic. And he says it's a misunderstanding that everything in Carnatic has to be, very robustly shaken. Sa gama pani sa Shri Guru Guha Murte na 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 Shri Guru. It's just so beautiful to hear that nishadam in his voice. And that line in the Anupallavi, which has its Svaraksharam, Yogini. You just have to, experience. It's not just hear or listen. You have to experience that nishadam in his voice. Now, if you take this one swaram in Jagadananda Karaka, Pamarizani pasasa, marizasa. Now, I'm just going to replace that re with ga. Apologies in advance. No, blasphemy intended here. It's just for, exploration purposes. But if you replace that re3 by ga, I feel nothing changes in terms of the feel or anything. It's anyway, there isn't much gamakam in that re. So it doesn't, like when you hear it, like if you if it were an instrument playing where you're not, saying the notes, I don't think there's any much significant difference at all. Pamagaza ni pasasa magaza pamagaza ni pamagaza pama pani ni pani saga ma pani pasa ni pamaga ni pamagaza, and then in the very end re ga ma, the higher ga comes. So there that contrast becomes even more interesting. You have the re3, which is normally the ga 2, and then immediately next to it the ga. But until that last part, the way the swaram is structured, the vivadiness of that re3 doesn't really come out. So I feel like orally it doesn't make a difference whether you sing it as re3 or ga 2, whether you pronounce that as re or ga when you're singing. So very interesting, right? So that I feel that's another case in point that really brings out this connection between Udayaravichandrika and Nattai very clearly. So as I said, the next set of ragas I wanted to talk about was Pavani and Sarangatarangini. So Pavani is it's a very rare raga, and I think for those of us who are serious listeners of Tamil or just more generally South Indian film music, we would just associate Parthaviri from Guna to Pavani, right? Beyond that, at least I haven't done a lot of research on this raga. So Pavani Aronam Avronam goes Sarigama Padani Sa Sani Rapamagari Sa Parthaviri Parthaviri. Beautiful song. Now, Sarangatarangini, for all practical purposes, is Hamsanadam. I mean, there is, of course, a technical difference. Hamsanadam is Sari Ma Pa Ni Sa Sani Pa Ma Ri Sa. Sarangatarangini would be Sari Ma Pa Da Ni Sa Sani Da Pa Ma Ri Sa. But a lot of people mix them up, and I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's such a big deal. Anyway, there's a similar kind of relationship that exists between Pavani and Sarangatarangini, similar to the Udayaravichandrika and Nattai, where a Vivadi note, if you interpret it as non-Vivadi, interesting things happen. So in that, there's a pre-prelude to this song. Many audio recordings of Parthaviri don't have it, but I found a version on YouTube that has that pre-prelude, where Ilayaraja is just, he has this very beautiful piece in Sarangatarangini. And it was only recently when I was hearing the song, I was like, wow, wait, what's going on? Like, this is supposed to be in Pavani, but this initial portion is out and out in Sarangatarangini. So what's going on? So I'll play that bit now. So essentially what's going on is, if you remove the re from Pavani, Sariga, so remove the re and retain the rest of the notes. Saga ma pa da ni sa ni da pa ma ga sa. So if you remove the re, step 1, and step 2, interpret the ga as re. The default name for that note is re. In most ragas we refer to it as re. Only in the a handful of Vivadi ragas it becomes ga, right? So re 2 or ga 1. So if we call it as re 2, sa re instead of sa ga, sa re ga. So remove that re. Sa ga, make that sa re ma pa da ni da pa ma re sa. So that is Sarangatarangini. Sorgame endralum adu nammora pola varuma, right? Tendral vandu ennai thodum. So all those are Sarangatarangini, right? So it was another very interesting connection that I wouldn't have thought of, if not for Ilayaraja, between Sarangatarangini and Pavani. And it's interesting. It's even more interesting because it's a similar kind of interpreting a note as Vivadi or non-Vivadi yields these, very intriguing connections. So I'll stop there. I realize this video has become really long. So if you've watched up to here, thank you very much for your patience. Do hit the like button and comment if you like this video. I would love to hear what you thought. Thank you and see you next time.